Storytelling is such an important part of a baseball broadcast. So, how do you prepare good stories for every day?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's there's some days where you're probably not going to have time to do stories because the game is that good. But it's the games that are kind of dragging on, or are the blowouts, or just don't have a good flow or a good feel to them. Is the time you bring things out. I mean, I try to remember a lot of stuff from my days here in San Diego, and also from my days in Chicago when I was working with the Cubs. And for example, this year we were playing our interleague series in Seattle, and it was a 1-0 game. It wasn't moving, it wasn't flowing. There were a lot of long at bats, and I was working with Bob Scanlon, and I had worked with Jerry Coleman there a few times, and Jerry did an interview with the Seattle radio station. And if you're familiar with things that go on at Safeco Field, they have a train that runs through the back behind the outfield wall. It's like a Union Station kind of a situation, and Jerry was doing an interview on a phone line before a game, and you could tell he was kind of getting anxious, and he didn't want to do the interview anymore. So, the true pro that he is, the train whistle sounded in the background, and he goes, "Guys, there's my train. I gotta go," and he hung up the phone. So it's always fun to kind of revisit that story when we go to Seattle, especially when there's a little time to do that. I had the pleasure of working with Greg Maddux both in Chicago and in San Diego, and there were some tremendous stories that he had told me that are still, I think, relevant to bring up. But you have to be careful about when you bring them up. I've learned the hard way a couple of times: never start a story with two outs, because chances are you're going to have to, there's going to be a quick out, and you're going to be left kind of hanging there, and try to pick it up in the next half inning. But it doesn't translate. So, you got to pick your spots. I never let my story time ever get in the way of action or in the game. So you have to really be able to concentrate on knowing where you left off in the story, being able to call some action that's happening during your story, coming back and recapping it enough so that you know that someone maybe has just tuned in and they're catching your story mid sentence. So kind of back it up a little bit to kind of move it forward. It's an art. And, Ted Leitner is really, really good at that. I think that's going back to your other question about Ted, learning from him. That's one thing I have picked up from him, and his ability to be able to drop a story, pick it back up, back it up, move it forward, and get it in before the half inning is over, and then kind of drop it because you've done your thing, and maybe relate something totally off the wall, later on in the game that you've noticed. So pick your spots, but don't let it interrupt the game.